Hello again everybody, and today I'm moving on from Spartacus and the slave revolt of 73 BC. I'm going to move on now to Julius Caesar and Julius Caesar's attention that he paid to Britain. It's quite an interesting subject for us today, given the troubled relationship between Britain and the continent of Europe. But how did all this come about in the first place with Julius Caesar? So, in 55 BC, Julius Caesar launched his first invasion of Britain, which he describes himself, writing in the third person in his work De Bello Gallico concerning the Gallic War, concerning the French War. He justified his invasion of Britain by saying that the tribes in southeast Britain had been helping the Gauls to fight against the Romans. So Anglo-French cooperation there. Against Italian influence, perhaps. Anyway, his first expedition took place relatively late in the campaigning year, so late summer. It was brief, little more than a fortnight. It was pretty disastrous, and yet it had profound and long-lasting consequences both for Britain and for Julius Caesar. Caesar, of course, makes a triumph out of what was essentially a disaster of poor planning and poor resourcing and poor execution, and says that he'd achieved his aim of having a reconnaissance expedition. But what did he come for in the first place? Why did he bother to come to a land which the Romans regarded as pretty much at the edge of the world, surrounded by a grey sea, poor weather, terrible food, and just there was nothing much appealing about it? Well, Caesar needed to stay in charge of a lot of legions in Gaul because he wanted to use those to help his bid for ultimate power in Rome against Pompey the Great and Crassus. Crassus, you might remember from his part in Spartacus's revolt. So he needed an enemy. And so he said, yes, there's an enemy, they're helping the Gauls, so I need to go and fight against them. So the reason he was interested principally was political. Anyway, after his disastrous reconnaissance expedition of 55, he came back a little less than a year later, this time reinforced with a lot of soldiers and a lot of ships which had gone so badly wrong. He also set off in midsummer, not in late summer, so the weather was better, and so he didn't suffer quite the amount of ship damage that he had done previously, although there was some. So what did he actually achieve? Well, he was here for maybe a couple of months. He fought his way through Kent. There were some battles along the way, had some minor skirmishes. People retreated, the Roman soldiers marched through. He crossed the River Thames. Received the surrender of some British tribal leaders, including the Trinovantes, who came from Essex and out into Suffolk, and then there was a battle against Cassivelaunus, the leader of the Catuvellauni tribe, whose hilltop, such as a hill exists in Hertfordshire, was at Wheathampstead near St Albans. There was a battle there. The Romans won reasonably easily, and little remains of that site now. There's what's sometimes called Devil's Dyke in Wheathampstead, and you know that you've trod where Caesar trod, should you be there. Anyway, he took hostages and then returned to Gaul in 54, late 54. He never came back again, and the Romans didn't come back again for 97 years until Claudius invaded in 43 AD. So, what did he actually achieve? Well, he went back to Rome and he told the Roman Senate that he had conquered Britain. This gave him military status, military prestige. It allowed him to remain at the head of his legions in Gaul, and ultimately that helped his power bid and his war against Pompey, which continued until the death of Pompey and ultimately the death of Caesar in 44, perhaps more of which at a later date. How much did the Romans actually benefit from having conquered Britain in 54 BC? Well, probably not very much really. There's some archaeological evidence that there was some trade. Trade seems to have been more important than politics, and how contemporary does that sound? So what can we say about all this? First of all, conquering Britain, very useful for political propaganda in Europe. The potential of trade in the short term was more important than the importance of politics, and that is borne out by coinage. And thirdly, when the Romans came under Claudius, almost 100 years later, they stayed, they changed the country forever, and made it truly, at least for 400 years, part of Europe.